Alright, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And I guess good morning to everyone here. So we are from Group 1. We are from Group 1, consisting of my teammate, Pang Chinglin, and me, Muhammad Fazli bin Saleh. And we are going to present to you about our corn project for our BSM 4503 plant development class. Right? So here we go.
Hey Fazli, before we start the project, right, I think it's better for us to get back to the basics first. We need to understand the theory or the facts behind what we are dealing with. Dr. Parames wants us to plant from the seeds, right? Remind me, what do we need to know again about the seeds and the function? I know if the corn is a monocot, it has one embryo. So what else do we need to know?
So yeah, corn is a monocotyledonous plant. Okay, so they are monocots. So being monocots, they're different from dicotyledonous plants in that they have one less cotyledon and hence monocotyledon. And as such, you can see that their leaves have a parallel vein arrangement. Sorry, a parallel vein arrangement. They have fibrous roots and they don't actually have secondary growth, meaning they do not grow in girth. They focus more on growth in height. So their vascular tissue bundles are scattered throughout the stem and they don't actually have any particular arrangement. And with this, there is no cortex inside the corn stem. So you may not see this, but the pollen on the corn and other monocot plants, there are actually like only one pore or a single furrow on the pollen itself. So because they're also herbaceous plants, monocots, they are characteristics of all monocotyledonous plants, meaning they have no wood in their structure.
Hmm, what is the best condition for the corn seed to germinate?
So the conditions needed for corn seed germination. Well, specifically, you'll need warmth, air, and moisture to start the process of seed germination. But generally, just make sure that the seeds are fully covered by the soil and ensure that the soil is moist. It doesn't need to be too wet, but just make sure that the seeds have enough stimuli from the soil and the water to to break its dormancy. So it will usually take around 5 to 6 days for the corn seeds to germinate, and then you'll see like a small little seed leaf coming out. So it looks like a small stem coming out, but that's actually the one seed leaf coming out, preparing itself for the new world. Ah.
Do you know how do we plant the seed? And what is the best condition for the plant growth?
Alright, so when planting seeds, we need to make sure that the seeds are placed in conditions conducive for its germination. So the seeds should be planted deep enough into the soil that it wouldn't actually, get washed off by the rain. So plant it about 2 inches into the soil, and we need to make sure that the soil is always moist to stimulate the seed germination. We don't need to be concerned too much about the surrounding temperatures because corn plants grow best between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, and with Malaysia's average around 27 degrees, our corn should come out just fine. As for the conditions for plant growth, well, for different plants, they have different conditions, but generally we need to consider a few factors, including temperature, the amount of light that it receives, water, oxygen, and mineral nutrients. So, as I've said before, for temperature, we don't need to worry too much because the average temperature in Malaysia is about 27 degrees, just nice between the frame of 20 to 30 degrees needed by corn plants. For light, it's best if you plant the corn right under the sun because corn plants need a lot of sunlight to produce its fruit, so let's try to avoid planting it in the shade. For water, we need to make sure that the roots are just moist enough, and you need to supply just enough water to the plants so that it doesn't actually flood the little guy. Okay. As for oxygen, it acts more for respiration to carry out the normal plant functions such as water and nutrient uptake. Okay, so besides that, we also need to consider about mineral nutrients. So, like what we learned before, some essential elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and such, micronutrients such as iron, manganese, and boron, these will already be like available in the soil and the fertilizers that we are going to use. So yeah, it's kind of cool, right? Like how such small things in life make such an important backbone to what the earth provides for us. So, like for us as humans, we have our baby stage, children stages, teens, and adults. Could you like explain a bit more about like the life cycle of how a plant develops?
Yeah, I know. Generally, a plant starts from its seed stage, breaking its dormancy. You will get the seed with leaves coming out from the soil and ready to enter a new world. A seedling then emerges, and slowly but steadily, it grows its way to become a small tree, after that a growing tree, and finally become a mature tree with flowers and fruits containing seeds. The seeds from the stem from the fruit then will fall to the ground and become seeds. And from the seed stage, the plant life cycle runs again.
So, Chinlin, just to share, according to the Botanic Gardens Conservation International, or the short form BGCI, plants act as the backbone of all life on Earth and as an essential resource for human well-being. So, to put it in perspective, plants make up 6 pillars of life, which are food, air, water, habitat, medicine, and climate. So in terms of food, you know that everything that we eat actually comes directly from plants. So throughout human history, it's been said that approximately about 7,000 different plant species have been used as food by people, and one of the popular versions will be our corn. So of course, we also know that plants supply air, and oxygen is brought to us by plants as a byproduct of their photosynthesis. So besides that, water also is given by the plants, or they actually act in synchronization with plants in that they regulate the water cycle, they help distribute and purify the planet's water, and they also help move water from the soil into the atmosphere through to the atmosphere through a process called transpiration. Now, plants also have an important role in habitat because besides what we use to form plants, they also make up the backbone for all habitats as well, because species of fish, wildlife, they also depend on plants not only for their own food but also for their shelter. Now back to what we use plants for, we also use it for medicine. So about 1/4 of all prescription drugs actually come directly from or are derivatives from plants. So did you know that about 4 out of 5 people around the world today actually rely on plants for their primary healthcare? And last but not least, climate is also a big factor into why plants are important, and that's because plants store carbon, and they have helped us keep much of the carbon dioxide produced from the burning of fossil fuels out of the atmosphere. Alright, so now that we've discussed about the facts and the knowledge behind plants and also about our corn, let's put all this into application.
To kickstart the project, we had prepared 2 pots, pit soil, sand, and of course the corn seeds. We mixed the soils and separated it into 2 pots. We planted 4 to 6 seeds in 1 pot, and there has no observation for the first week. Coming to week 2, their seedling germinated, while the seedling is around 3.0 cm in length. Due to the heavy rain in week 2, the young seedlings were hurt. Only one was survived after rescuing. Hence, a new pot was planted. It is great to see the seedlings were growing day by day. 11 cm that measured from ground to the nut on the top. 2 new leaves had grown out of the 2 cotyledons. However, there were white spots on the leaves due to the presence of aphids. Even one of the leaves had been eaten by the insects. It is so sad to see that happened on the plants. In week 5, there was 1 new leaf and the plant was 15 cm in height, but the stem of plants were thin and the leaf was soft, so we had constantly exposed the plant under the sun. Starting from the following weeks, there were 5 leaves in week 6, but sadly to see there were insect infection on the leaf and white spots spread around and caused wilt leaf. So we tried to renew the soil and apply fertilizers once in 3 days and let the plant to absorb more sunlight. Woohoo! There were 7 leaves in week 7. Obviously, the leaves were greener and healthier. However, there were white and round-shaped spots on the leaves which were suspected to be the ants' egg. The plant had become the home for the ants, but it did not affect the plant growth as there were 9 leaves in week 8. But the plant had been bent towards the direction of the sun. We used a stand to support the plant and directly move it to a less shady spot under the sun. The plant was 30 cm in height right now, but the leaves were not stiff enough to grow horizontally, instead bending down. The plant was growing happily, and there were more ants started to make their nest on the plant. Fortunate enough, it didn't affect the development of the plant. Coming to week 11, there was no fruit bearing yet, and the leaves were not that healthy as expected. Some segments of leaves seemed damaged and white spots spread widely. Some leaves were also dying off, but most probably due to the old age. Well, the ants were still staying happily with the plant. Coming to the last week of observation, the plant was 50 cm tall right now, and there were tassels on the plant. Stem height of the plant is the parameter for our observation. From the data, we can see that the plant height is not growing directly proportional to the weeks, instead the curve is fluctuated. It might be due to the condition of the soil, fertilizers that we use, exposure to the sunlight, influence from the environment, or even the infection of the pathogen. Our maize plant had grown until the almost last stage. If we were given more time, they would have corn bearing. We are fortunate to say that our plant is growing. It's been 3 months for me, Chinlin and Fazli to work hard on this project, and finally, Group 1 had accomplished the mission.